If you enjoy stepping into the past, remember to like and subscribe. Now, tell me who should travel next, and in what year? You wake abruptly, your nostrils filled with a sharp mixture of dung, smoke, and the faint sweetness of rotting apples. The damp chill of early dawn presses against your skin, seeping through the rough woolen cloak that feels nothing like the sleek fabrics back home. You push yourself up on hands that still remember the smooth glass screen of your phone, but now grasp rough, oily wood beneath a straw-filled mattress. The narrow, crooked room smells alive with the damp earth and smoke from a fire pit, its ember glow barely lighting the crude plaster walls. Outside, the clatter of horses, hooves, and the distant call of merchants set the city's slow morning rhythm. She, like you, has landed without warning, a 19-year-old influencer whose digital world vanished, traded for stone streets and wooden carts. It's Paris, not the glittering, polished city of today, but the grim, bustling medieval capital of 1350, on the cusp of the 100 Years, wars, turmoil, and fame that would only come centuries later. You realize quickly that scrolling through feeds means nothing here. Survival hinges on senses sharpened to a raw edge, and a mind used to puzzles and problem-solving. Your engineering background pulls you from the fog of shock. Those circuits and software patterns translate loosely into working with mechanics and materials. The stable where you find yourself is your first reality check. Livestock muck sticks between your fingers, the stench pungent and overwhelming. But you notice, in the corner, a broken wheel leaning against a beam. It's crafted crudely, its spokes twisted and splintered. Back home, you'd patch a bike tire. Here, it's about making this wheel speak the language of resilience again. Hands outstretched, you gather scraps of wood, binding fibers, and a scrap of leather. Muscle memory drives you, fingers recalling knots and tension. The stable keeper's cautious gaze softens as the wheel shifts under your tentative repairs. It's small, but in a world where wheels carry hopes, food, and news, your knowledge breathes life into these old patterns. Outside, the city rouses with stench amplified 100-fold, human waste, horse dung, smoke from countless hearths. Women carrying buckets of water from the Seine carefully navigate the muddy street, where puddles reflect a sky heavy, with gray clouds clinging low, promising rain. A bell tolls, a call that blends fear with routine. Rumors drift of the plague's shadow closing in after recent outbreaks, while soldiers march off to faraway battles you only vaguely understand from stories in your time. Food is scarce, and the market smells equally of fresh bread and festering refuse. A sudden cough from a nearby child reminds you how fragile bodies are here. You think about sanitation systems good old Paris lacks, about masks and antiseptics, knowledge weighing heavily like unshed tears for battles you cannot fight. Yet, amid the grime and grit, your mind clicks. How to improve this small corner of existence? Your instincts press you toward small inventions. Repairing water wheels by the river, reorganizing latrines for better drainage, or even refining makeshift pulleys in the baker's workshop. Each challenge here is a knot to untie, a mechanical riddle wrapped in the human struggle of survival. At night, the cold seeps deeper, and you nestle into whatever warmth you can find, muscles aching in new ways. The past has no pressing pause button. You're forced awake not by notification pings, but by coughing fits, echoing through wooden walls, the smell of burning peat, and the distant sound of prayers whispered for health and peace. Before sleep claims you again, you catch yourself wondering about the weight of time, not as an abstract concept, but as the slow erosion of skin, hope, and breath. How long can a mind trained in the speed of modernity thrive in the steady, grinding pace of medieval life? The question clings to you like the city's thick mist, impossible to shake yet oddly grounding. The sharp clang of horseshoes striking cobblestones echoes before the street reveals itself. A river of bodies pressed between wooden carts, shouting vendors, and the eerie creak of leather harnesses. The air is heavy with the mixed sense of sweat, freshly baked bread, and the unmistakable tang of fermented refuse. She moves cautiously, feeling the uneven stones beneath her worn leather shoes. The uneven rhythm, a jarring contrast to the polished floors she's used to. Navigating the streets of Paris in 1350 is like stepping into a living breath of chaos, and the noise never eases. The clamor of merchants haggling over onions, the sharp calls of fishmongers wielding knives to prepare their catch, even the occasional crack of a whip as a cart veers too close to the crowded footpaths. All threads tying her into this chaotic tapestry. The narrow streets funnel scents and sounds into her senses, assaulting and intriguing in equal measure. She remembers her Instagram posts, carefully staged and polished, now useless in the swirl of mud and shouting. Instead, her engineering mind clicks into a new mode: how to move efficiently, how to anticipate the unpredictable. She gauges the crowd's flow the way she once studied traffic patterns through data streams. There's no smartphone map here. Every step demands calculation and quick reflexes. When a plank breaks on a cart's wheel nearby, she notes a familiar mechanical fault, an axle worn dangerously thin. Her fingers itch to fix it, but tools and materials are scarce, and trust even scarcer. The stalls burst with life. Bundles of cabbage look bruised. Freshly baked flatbreads steam beside dried meats, and ale mugs clink with rough laughter. She smells smoky peat burning in nearby homes, and the sharper, acrid scent of someone sharpening a blade nearby. That odor unsettles her, the reminder of violence lurking constantly, not just from war far beyond the city's limits, but in personal squabbles and tense market days. Each scent and sound layers into a complex map of survival. Her modern assumptions are both a shield and a hindrance. She wants to suggest an order or system to reduce the market's chaos, a way to manage vendor flow or waste disposal. Yet, centuries before public sanitation or market regulation, her ideas feel naive here. Small talks are met with suspicion, or worse, indifference. Still, she experiments quietly, fashioning a sling from frayed cords to help carry heavier loads, redirecting a vendor's cart away from a bottleneck with careful nudges and gestures. Slowly, she earns curious glances, then guarded respect, not for who she was, but for what she can do. The news of battles, far away, seeps through cracks in the stone walls. The sounds of distant drums and rumors of English troops crossing the Somme swirl alongside fears of plague resurgence. Paris itself is a city bracing for dread as much as winter. She notices people's eyes flickering with worry beneath their hoods, children coughing in doorways, and the way the bakers cling to their ovens as if they might burn away misfortune. She learns quickly that her resilience depends on patience and observation. The street's chaotic pulse forces her to rethink her definition of efficiency, survival, and even time. The long hours spent in lines or hauling goods make her appreciate the slow endurance of bodies and communities. Her thoughts drift to the distant glow of her vanished world, where moments are measured in likes and live streams, now replaced by footsteps and faces etched by hardship. As dusk settles, lanterns flicker to life, casting wavering shadows on the timber-framed houses. She pauses beneath a crooked sign, swinging gently in the cold breeze, muscles weary but mind alert. The city's noise fades into a hum beneath starless skies. She wonders how much of herself she will lose in this swirl of noise and dirt, and if, by the end, the woman who documented every step of her modern life will find new meaning in the raw, unfiltered story of survival carved into these crowded streets. The damp stone beneath her feet radiates a cold that seeps through the soles of her worn shoes. biting into the bones of her legs as she weaves through the market's chaos. The sharp scent of raw wool mingles with the faint, sour odor of spoiled cabbage scattered near a broken cart. Above, gray skies press low, promising more rain, while chill wind threads through ragged cloth booths flapping like restless ghosts. Around her, voices rise in a blend of bartering pleas, laughing children, and the rhythmic clop of horses pulling overloaded carts. The rough textures of burlap and frayed linen brush against her arms as she moves, a tactile reminder that comforts of softness and warmth are luxuries hard to find here. This is Paris, 1350, and the market is unforgiving. She feels the weight of cold in every breath, the chill solidifying like stone inside her lungs. It's nothing like her polished world, filled with climate control and heated rooms. Every shiver muffles the remnants of her past life, while the rough edges of medieval survival press forward. Because here, warmth is scarce, and the cold taps relentlessly on hungry skin. Her occupation, an Instagram influencer, feels like a distant echo. No filtered feeds or endless followers exist. Instead, her survival depends on keen observation and quick thinking, skills sharpened from crafting posts now repurposed to reading people, weather, and opportunity. She notices how merchants pile their goods carefully to shield them from dampness, how layers of cloth double as barricades against wind. Her mind, trained to analyze trends, now calculates subtler patterns. Which stall shades the goods best, how the flow of customers avoids muddy patches, which merchants offer smiles beneath their hardened faces. Despite the chill, her fingers work steadily, testing the tensile strength of rough rope tied loosely on a cart. Her engineering instincts kick in, diagnosing weaknesses no one asks to repair. Yet, she spots that the pulley holding sacks of grain is frayed, risking disaster. Her careful suggestion to the vendor to tighten it with extra cordage earns a cautious nod, a fragile trust budded. Tools are rare, but knowledge more so, and in this moment, her modern reasoning becomes currency. Rumors drift with the wind, whispers of the 100 years, war battles flaring anew, and the terrifying waves of plague still haunting the city's outskirts. These threats hang over daily chores like static in the air. She watches a group of weary peasants huddle for warmth near a fire pit, their faces pale and shadows deep. The memory of hand sanitizers and hospitals clashes with this crude scene of vulnerability. Her body aches with the cold and the strange loneliness of a stranger born centuries too late. Yet it is in this struggle that she inches closer to understanding. Adaptation is more visceral than any tutorial, learning the precise grip her hands need to tie cords, the quickest path through muddy alleys, the silence required when coughing spreads fear, the readiness to accept that not every question will have an answer here. As night falls, the market empties slowly, lantern light flickering against shuttered stalls. She stumbles back to her scant shelter, muscles stiff with cold and effort. In the quiet, her thoughts drift to time, not as the endless scroll of moments back home, but as measured in the grit beneath rough cloth and the slow thawing of frozen fingers. The past demands a patience she never imagined, a resilience born not of likes or shares but of simple endurance. The heavy, sour tang of rotting refuse lingers in the narrow alleyway, filtered through the thick fog settling low over Paris. Damp stone walls press close, dripping with yesterday's rain, and the faint scratching of rats echoes beneath the wooden scaffolds. She steadies her breath, heart pulsing unevenly as shadows twitch in the dim light, unseen dangers lurking just beyond the edge of vision. The city's undercurrent hums not with the energy of thriving commerce today, but with the furtive stirrings of fear. She feels the rough grain of the cold cobbles beneath her fingers as she steps carefully, each movement deliberate. Her engineering mind runs scenarios, structural weaknesses, unstable beams overhead, potential escape routes. Fear is sharp, a biting companion reminding her how fragile safety can be in a time where illness and violence hold sway without warning. In every corner, the threat of plague spreads invisible to the naked eye, yet deadly, and the risk of banditry or betrayal weaves through the crowded streets like a dark thread. Her experience as an influencer, where transparency and control were constant, feels a strange paradox. Here, uncertainty governs every transaction, every glance. She watches a woman coughing violently near a well, the crude wooden bucket trembling in her grasp. The knowledge she holds of germ theory, hand-washing, quarantine, is useless, or worse, suspicious. Yet, she quietly advises a local with a firm nod to cleanse the water source with boiling, a simple act of prevention born from her modern habits. It's met with wary acceptance, a silent acknowledgement that survival requires new lessons. The marketplace feels like a minefield. Loose stones, sudden shouts, and the scent of burning pitch mingle with whispers about the war's distant thunder. Soldiers march through the city, heavy with armor that clinks and creaks, their presence both protective and threatening. She observes their makeshift engineering, wooden wheels greased with animal fat, patched leathers, and imagines how she might improve those designs if only she had tools. Here, every invention must serve survival first, not style or status. As days blend, she tests her limits against a world without predictable Wi-Fi signals or instant information. Anxiety swells in moments of silence or sudden movement. The cold bites deeper. The wet seeps into her bones. But in the flickering candlelight of her shelter, she re-engages her problem-solving mind, repairing woven baskets to carry goods, fashioning simple splints with scraps of wood, and creating rudimentary filtration devices from cloth to clean murky water. Each makeshift triumph knits her tighter to this place. Yet the unseen dangers press closer than ever. The plague shadow creeps through the city, and the fear is not just of sickness but of isolation and death in loneliness. She witnesses faces etched with exhaustion, hands trembling from cold or pain, children held too tightly by their parents. Night brings no rest, only quiet prayers and the rustle of rats searching for scraps. In these moments, she feels her modern self fracturing, reshaping in the fire of necessity. Time here is not measured by likes or views, but by breaths taken between fears, by each movement away from danger and toward hope. The sharp bite of fear is relentless, but it is also a teacher, forcing adaptation, humility, and a raw grasp of what it means to be human in a world both foreign and frightening. The smell hits first, thick, pungent, a biting mix of decomposing waste, burning wood, and wet animals pressed into the narrow streets. Her lungs tighten against the haze, a sharp contrast to the filtered air she once breathed in climate-controlled rooms. Around her, the city pulses with clamor. Vendors shouting over the clatter of wooden carts, the distant howl of dogs chasing shadows, and the raw scrape of worn leather on stone. She touches her cloak, rough and scratchy against cold skin, and feels the weight of the day settle like a stone in her belly. She is 19, an Instagram influencer thrown into the swirling chaos of Paris in 1350. The bright, curated life of hashtags and followers feels a universe away. Here, there are no likes, no filters to soften reality, only grime and noise pressing down from every angle. The modern mind she carries clenches and twists, a tool both dazzling and useless in a place where dirt is everywhere, and time moves differently, slow, grinding, relentless. The market streets are a sensory overload. She watches how people shout over one another not just to sell but to survive. Bodies crowd tightly, unwashed and weary, the scent of spoiled fish mingling with fresh bread and burning peat. She notices how the lack of sanitation invites disease, yet no one speaks of it openly. The plague's rumor weaves quietly through every conversation. Fear is a constant thread beneath daily life, just as pressing as the need for bread or firewood. Her engineering training surfaces amid the turmoil, systems and logic buried deep inside her brain flickering back to life. She begins to see inefficiencies. The muddy drain near the fountain clogged with refuse, the loose wheel on a cart leaking grains, the wasted effort as townsfolk haul water from the Seine in heavy, leaking buckets. Her fingers itch for tools and materials, but all she has is ingenuity and observation. She experiments cautiously, rearranging delivery routes for firewood to reduce congestion, fashioning crude filters from scraps of linen to protect water supplies, and suggesting simpler repairs to wheels and pulleys. Trust comes slowly. Some villagers watch her with suspicion. Others seem quietly grateful when the smallest problems ease. They deal in survival, after all, and new ideas are measured first by whether they keep the rain off their backs or spare them from wounds and illness. Yet every day tests her limits, not just in body, but in mind. The constant noise erodes focus. The dust clogs her throat. The ever-present ache of cold seeps into her bones. The absence of her digital world makes time slippery. Minutes stretch and collapse unpredictably. No notifications to pace her day. Only the changing light and the rhythm of human toil. As the week wears on, the rupture between her old life and this harsh reality widens. She realizes that her modern assumptions about hygiene, efficiency, safety must bend or break here. Control is an illusion. Survival demands humility and a new way of thinking. The world's cacophony becomes a kind of rough music, and she learns to listen differently, not for trends or clicks, but for the rhythms between life and decay. At night, beneath the swollen moon, she traces the chill settling deeper into her skin and mind. The gap between the world she left and this one feels like an abyss widening with every breath. Yet, within the terror and exhaustion, something fragile stitches itself. A slow, stubborn thread of belonging that insists on weaving her new story from this ancient, relentless city. The air thickens immediately. Smoke, sweat, and hot iron pressing against your skin as you step inside the blacksmith's forge. The relentless clang of hammer against anvil beats a harsh rhythm, vibrating through your arms and chest. A surge of heat wraps around you like a living thing, hotter than midday sun, the smell of burning coal sharp in your nostrils. Sweat drips down your forehead, stinging your eyes, mingling with the soot smudged across your hands and face. It's the first day you trade digital followers for iron sparks. A week spent learning the language of fire and steel in the grimiest corner of medieval Paris. You, an influencer turned apprentice, feel acutely the gulf between your modern mind and this brutal craft. Your engineering background hums quietly beneath the surface, analyzing forces and materials as the smith reshapes glowing metal. You watch the curves of wrought iron, the ways heat transforms hardness into pliability. Your fingers, still clumsy with unfamiliar tools, want precision, clean strokes. The smith's rhythm is raw, intuitive, every strike guided by muscle memory honed over years. You learn quickly that no amount of planning replaces hands hardened by sweat and flame. The blacksmith's workshop is a crucible of survival. Tools lie scattered. Tongs, hammers, chisels, all stained with rust and soot, each vital to fixing carts, weapons, cookware. You recognize tasks from your engineering days, diagnosing worn joints, assessing tensile weaknesses. You propose slight modifications. A reinforced bracket here, a carefully measured wedge there. Some suggestions meet skeptical gazes, but your attitude, focused, practical, earns cautious trust. You realize that efficiency here is not just convenience, but the difference between a wheeled cart collapsing mid-journey or a spade breaking in the fields where food depends on every tool. Outside, the city's unrest murmurs beneath the forge's roar. News travels unevenly. War drums and rumors of English raids echo faintly, reminding you these ironworks serve both farmer and soldier. The blacksmith's trade is central, repairing not just metal, but the fragile chain holding daily life together. Coal crackles, sparks fly into the dark, and you feel the pulse of the city in every blow. Your modern assumptions wobble in heat and grime. You imagine safety protocols, clean workshops, protective gear, luxuries absent here. Your bruises and burns are badges of a different world, where pain is a teacher and endurance a kind of knowledge. You take pride in steady progress. The first unbroken horseshoe, a bent nail rescued from ruin. The forge challenges your patience and reshapes your sense of time, measured not in scrolling feeds, but in the coolness of tempered steel. At night, your body aches with unfamiliar fatigue, muscles stiff from unfamiliar labor, yet amid exhaustion, a quiet satisfaction settles, a sense of exchange. You offer your knowledge and receive a glimpse into resilience forged in fire and necessity. The rift between your world and this medieval one remains wide, but through labor's alchemy, edges begin to blur. Survival here demands more than skill. It asks for humility, adaptability, and the courage to shape a new self amid smoke and iron. The scent of wet earth drifts heavy near the Seine's edge, sharp and salty with decay. Your feet sink slightly into the dark, shifting mud as you crouch to dip the crude wooden pail into the sluggish water, the surface rippling with murmurs of unseen currents. A gentle squelch follows each movement, mud clinging to your ankles, cold and unyielding. Around you, the riverbanks blend into a chorus of distant calls, boats creaking against worn docks, dogs barking near shadowed carts, and the low murmur of market voices rising over the city's breath. You, 19, and thrust abruptly from the world of filtered feeds into this muddy reality, feel the unfamiliar weight of water as it presses against the wood and leather, binding your fragile vessel for the first time. The knowledge embedded in your fingers from engineering classes surfaces, calculating weight distribution, understanding the fragility of containers, and the endurance of materials under strain. Each careful dip is a small lesson on the limits of tools in a world less forgiving than your own. The Seine is life and risk intertwined. You watch as others fill their buckets, wary of the visible scum and the invisible threats beneath. You recall stories of contaminated water spreading illness, plague lurking quietly even now. Your modern mind aches with the knowledge of germs and filtration, yet here, boiled water and purification are distant concepts, shadowed by effort and scarcity. You adapt by fashioning a makeshift filter from torn linen, carefully filtering the muddy water before the long trek home, a modest shield against unseen danger. Treading back along uneven paths, the load tugs at your arms, muscles burning with effort unfamiliar to your usual routines. The damp chill cuts through your thin wool cloak, and the muddy shoes drag with each step. The marketplace bustles nearby, the buzz of bargaining voices mingling with horse hooves and the metallic clatter of blacksmiths at work. You note how the simplicity of these tasks, a daily water run, requires planning, strength, and endurance in ways your old life never demanded. The labor shifts something inside you. Your assumptions about convenience and hygiene unravel. Survival here is a constant negotiation with hardship. You observe the rhythms of the townfolk, their practiced movements, how the weight of water is shared. Buckets balanced on shoulders, hands steady from repetition. These communal exchanges stitch you tentatively into the fabric of this old city, where every droplet counts. You reflect on the alien pace of life, marked by physical effort and immediate need instead of digital distractions or the swift victories of fleeting popularity. The river's muddy edge offers no glamour but an unvarnished truth that your modern skills can both aid and frustrate adaptation. Still, each trek deepens your awareness. Water is not just liquid, but a force shaping bodies, societies, and endurance across centuries. At the end of the week, when the cold seeps deeply and your limbs ache with honest exhaustion, you recognize a subtle shift. The burden of water taught you patience and the power of small, deliberate actions. The past's weight presses on you, yes, but also teaches that survival is measured one step and one careful breath at a time. The warm flicker of a single candle casts dancing shadows on rough wooden beams, the soft glow barely pushing back the darkness of the cramped peasant's hut. The sharp, earthy smell of damp straw mixed with smoked meat hangs thick in the air, mingling with the faint, spicy scent of herbs steeping in a worn clay pot. She sits on a simple bench, knees aching from the hard floor, beneath a coarse woolen skirt, feeling the uneven ribs of the candle's wax as the light trembles. Around her, voices, quiet but steady, rise and fall with the rhythm of shared survival. She is 19, far from the world of carefully curated Instagram posts, thrust into a time when warmth comes not from pixels, but from flesh and fire. The room hums with the ordinary sounds of hard lives. The crackle of burning wood, the scrape of a wooden spoon against a bowl, the whispered exchange of stories etched by daily toil. The peasant family's hands, weathered from the fields, offer her simple food, a coarse bread made from barley, a bowl of thick pottage with roots and maybe a stray bean or two, slices of salted pork preserved through long winters. Her engineering mind, trained to solve problems in controlled environments, begins to see the patterns in this humble scene. She notices the careful rationing of fuel, how the fire's embers are coaxed rather than wasted, the way pots hang over the flame for maximum heat transfer. It occurs to her how scarcity shapes innovation, not in sleek gadgets but in the clever use of scarce resources. Her fingers trace the wooden table's grain, rough and scarred, evidence of years of meals, plans, and hands passed from generation to generation. The family's eyes assess her silently, curiosity mixed with suspicion. Her strange clothing and manner mark her as outsider, more ghost than guest. But her quiet efforts, helping carry water, mending a loose floorboard, fixing a broken chair leg with a borrowed tool, slowly build fragile bridges. Trust here is built not on words, but shared work, and the simple act of presence. Outside, the city breathes unevenly. The distant toll of bells warns of approaching danger or death. Perhaps a plague victim removed hastily, or a curfew enforced to keep order. Battles rumble beyond Paris, each skirmish a shadow stretching across these worn walls. Life in the hut comes with an acute awareness of fragility. Fragility not only of life, but of trust and hope. As the meal dwindles, the weight of fatigue presses heavily. The past rejects her need for speed and ease, replacing it with endurance and presence. The firelight reveals the lines beneath her eyes, the faint tremor in her hands from cold and hunger, and the slow unfurling of acceptance. Here, in this flickering candlelight, among the quiet clatter of shared utensils, she tastes the first real bond, not measured in likes or shares, but in survival, resilience, and the fragile promise of belonging. She wonders how long it will take to fold her modern self into this ancient pulse of life, and whether the woman who documented joy and chaos in digital light can find comfort in the slow, steady warmth of flickering shadows. The sharp, gritty sting of ash clings to your skin, mingling with the iron scent that saturates the smoky forge. Each breath draws in a harsh mix of burning charcoal and hot metal, the heat pressing close enough to blur the edges of your vision. The rasp of the bellows fills the air, steady, relentless, a pulse driving the rhythm of hammer strikes that ring out like warning bells against the anvil. Your hands, stiff and scorched at the ends, grasp battered tools foreign yet familiar as you bend over a glowing blade, feeling both the weight of past conventions and the pull of new possibilities. You are 19, transported without warning into 1350 Paris, an Instagram influencer trapped in a medieval world where dirt and danger are constant companions. But today, you trade the flicker of your old screen for the fiery glow of the forge, drawing on your engineering instincts to navigate the raw, brutal craft of blacksmithing. The challenge is far beyond trends or likes. It's a matter of adaptation and survival, where every nail, every horseshoe mended or created holds immediate consequence for the people relying on sturdy tools and weapons. The iron before you pulses with heat, colors shifting from molten orange to dull gray as you work. Your mind races, translating knowledge from your modern life, principles of leverage and metallurgy, strength and stress, into practical gestures. You experiment with shaping wedges and improving joints on crude farm tools, convincing the wary smith to test your ideas despite centuries of tradition weighing against change. A simple contraption, an improvised clamp fashioned from scrap iron and leather, holds a blade more steadily under the hammer's fall, reducing wasted effort and improving precision. Around you, the forge's dark walls soak in heat and shadow. You catch the flicker of candlelight bouncing off rough stone, imagining the countless hands that struggled here before. War news trickles in, English armies poised farther north, plague murmurs persistent beneath everyday noise. The work you do is more than craft. It's part of a fragile chain that holds the city's battered piece together. Each tool you help shape could mean a farmer's harvested grain or a soldier's defense. Your modern assumptions are both asset and burden. You yearn for safety gear, for clean, measured procedures, but the forge accepts only courage and stubbornness. Your burned fingers remind you that progress is often scorched into the skin. Yet, with each success, a reinforced plowshare, a sharpened blade, you earn quiet glances of approval. The past doesn't move quickly, but it is not immobile. When at last the hammer falls silent and soot settles like a second skin, exhaustion rolls through you, a deep, honest fatigue born of fire and effort. The forge has no compassion for weakness or indecision. It demands transformation. As you wipe grime from your face, the glow of embers fades, leaving you to wonder how much of your modern self will survive this trial by ash and iron, and how much will be forever reshaped by the sting of this ancient, relentless craft. The faint flicker of candlelight barely pushes back the gloom in the cramped kitchen. The scent of smoky peat mingles with the sharp tang of damp wood and sour grain, weaving through the air thick with the steady hum of whispered conversations and the scrape of rough fabric against stone floors. She feels the weight of exhaustion press into her shoulders as she moves carefully, offering a small bundle wrapped in worn cloth, an unexpected gesture amid the city's relentless harshness. The soft rustle of fabric, the tentative snatch of fingers reaching out, and the brief meeting of cautious eyes mark a quiet turning point. She, a 19-year-old Instagram influencer lost centuries from home, carries a modern mind clashing with this medieval world's grit and suspicion. Her previous life's rhythms, likes, shares, and constant validation fade beneath the raw texture of survival. Here, trust is scarce, earned in stolen moments and simple kindnesses, not declared in digital affirmations. The bundle in her hands, a piece of bread and herbs scavenged from market leftovers, holds more than sustenance. It carries goodwill threaded with hope. The market's day-long bustle fades as she retreats with a weary neighbor, a woman shaped by cold winters and hard work, whose face is etched with lines from toil and loss. Her own hands tremble slightly, unused to such open vulnerability, yet her nursing instincts stir. an impulse to heal through presence rather than medicine. She watches as the bundle is shared with a child feverish and flushed, the thin fingers clutching the coarse bread with desperation. This act, a small light within the overwhelming gloom, begins to dissolve barriers. The woman's gaze softens, hesitation giving way to quiet acknowledgement. In a world shadowed by plague's lingering threat, warfare's rumble and daily scarcity, moments of care bind strangers as kin. Her engineering mind considers this fragile network, trust like a structure needing steady support, adaptation, and preservation. She notes how these exchanges shape resource use, extending community beyond blood and birthright. Outside, the city breathes with uneasy rhythms, the distant toll of church bells, the clang of smiths hammering by firelight, and the strangers shuffles through muddy streets. The cold air bites sharper now, and the season's shortening days press urgency into every decision. She feels the friction between modern assumptions about individuality, speed, control, and this place where survival is steady, communal, and often slow. The weight of this realization settles quietly, a lesson woven through shared breath and stolen kindness. As night deepens, she withdraws to her sparse quarters, muscles aching, heart heavy yet lightened by the fragile threads of connection. The flickering candle casts long shadows, no longer isolating but embracing. In this small moment, among strangers bound by hardship, she glimpses the slow, hard work of belonging. The week's fatigue pulses in her veins, but so does a nascent understanding that trust, once kindled, may yet grow to banish the darkest shadows. The warm, yeasty smell of fresh bread pierces the cold morning air, weaving through narrow streets before you even reach the bakery's open doorway. The sound of crackling embers inside the oven blends with the soft thud of dough being kneaded and the low murmur of worn wooden tools scraping over stone surfaces. Your fingers press against the floured workbench, rough and cool beneath the dusting of white powder. The heat from the oven radiates against your skin, a small comfort against the damp chill that clings to your threadbare cloak. Here in this tight, bustling space, the rhythm of the bakery pulses steady and alive. You are 19 and thrown centuries backward, your modern life as an Instagram influencer a distant memory as you roll up your sleeves in a Parisian bakery of 1350. The routines and rituals shock your system, hours before dawn, long stretches of hard labor, and attention that is not to an audience but to the dough, the fire, the subtle balance of textures and timing. Your engineer's mind sparks to life and curiosity, how heat diffuses through the stone oven, how yeast ferments under varying conditions, how to conserve precious fuel in a world where every resource counts. You watch the baker's hands, skilled and sure, folding and shaping loaves with practiced grace. The bakery is a hub, not just of food but of community and survival. Bread here is both sacred and scarce, nourishment that can sustain or break the fragile health of the city's inhabitants. You feel the delicate tension between tradition and innovation. Your suggestions, adjusting oven door seals to hold heat better, timing water additions to enhance fermentation, are met with skepticism at first, but slowly curiosity. A nod here, a patient glance there, your knowledge is a tentative currency. Outside, the city wakes fully. Horses clip-clop on stone, merchants set up stalls. The air thickens with wood smoke and damp wool. News of distant battles and the slow creep of plague hover over daily life. But in the bakery's warm glow, such worries blur for a moment. Your hands, stained with flour and soot, grow steadier with each loaf, each measured kneading. You learn the delicate balance between patience and urgency, a lesson far from the immediate gratification of your former digital realm. Yet, each day is a challenge. The cold still bites at dawn's first light, exhaustion weighs heavily, and trust must be earned not with flashy content, but through shared labor and respect. Your modern assumptions, clean kitchens, electric ovens, feel absurd here, replaced by grit and fire. Still, you find quiet satisfaction in small successes. A loaf that rises perfectly, the smell that draws neighbors from their homes. At night, as embers die down and shadows stretch long over the city, you reflect on this strange new rhythm. The bakery's pulse, steady, relentless, teaches you about endurance and the value of nurturing life from humble ingredients. The past is not just a place of hardship, but a space where simple acts carry profound weight. And in this moment, breathing the warm scent of fresh bread, you sense a sliver of belonging forming within the ancient stones and flour-dusted air. The sharp tang of smoke and sweat clings to the crowded alley, mingling with the acrid scent of burnt wood and the sour sweetness of stale crumbs crushed underfoot. The clatter of rough laughter and shouted bets bounces from worn stone walls, weaving through the chaos of ragged children darting between carts and stall shouts. You feel the gritty grime of city dust under your fingernails as a small, smudged hand slips into yours, a silent invitation to join a chaotic game beneath a patchwork sky. Faces smeared with soot and smiles wide despite swollen lips and scraped knees surround you, their energy raw and contagious. You, 19 and uprooted from your filtered existence as an Instagram influencer, find yourself swept into the unpredictable world of Parisian street children, survivors of plague, poverty, and war. Your modern notions of childhood dissolve here, replaced by fierce independence and unwritten codes of survival. Yet your engineering mind sees patterns even in this chaos. Routes for quicker escapes, makeshift shelters cleverly rigged from discarded cloth and wood, and a barter system humming under the surface of raucous play. The children move with swift, practiced ease, snatching food from market stalls, trading trinkets scrounged from refuse, avoiding watchful eyes. You learn to mimic their movements, finding strength in speed and silence. Your presence is strange to them at first, a pale figure with odd manners and different clothes. But the shared laughter breaks walls. The passing of a stolen apple cements fragile trust. You discover how your knowledge can help, fashioning small tools from scraps, mending torn shoes with thread baited from frayed sacks, organizing hiding places for spoils. Your suggestions blur awkwardly into their rough world, an uneasy blend of modern thought and medieval grit. Around you, the city lives with restless tension. Bells toll for curfews, distant shouts hint at skirmishes beyond the walls, and shadows lengthen as winter encroaches. Disease quietly threads through the narrow streets, stealing children even as their laughter defies despair. You watch as a boy coughs hard, clutching his ribs, and your nurse's instincts flare, a mix of helplessness and resolve. Clean water is scarce, scraps often spoiled. Your modern hygiene lessons feel like unreachable dreams. Yet, this week, something shifts. You find sanctuary in stolen moments, a shared crust around a flickering fire, whispered stories of faded families, the warmth of laughter kindling an ember of belonging. The chaos of survival softens into the rhythm of friendship, rough, honest, and never guaranteed. Your weary limbs ache, but your heart stretches to hold the sprawling, messy family of the streets. As night falls, you tuck yourself into a corner beneath a threadbare cloak, the city's noises fading into distant hums. The grime beneath your nails is no longer just dirt. It holds memories of touch, trust, and quiet victories. You wonder how much of your old life you carry with you, and how much this relentless, ragged existence will rewrite who you are. The future remains uncertain, but in this fleeting light, the fragile human need for connection burns bright against the darkness. The sharp clatter of wooden boots against stone reverberates in the narrow alleyways, mingling with the low murmur of haggling voices and the occasional bark of a stray dog. The air tastes of smoke and damp wool, heavy with the scent of sweat and unwashed bodies pressed close in the crowded streets. She feels the rough texture of carved wood beneath her palms as she nervously adjusts the strap on her satchel, the coarse fibers scratching against her frayed sleeve. Around her, the rhythms of medieval Paris beat with an urgency and order she's only beginning to decipher. She is 19, a modern Instagram influencer thrust into the dense social fabric of 1350 Paris, where every gesture, glance, and inflection carries weight far beyond words. Her engineer's mind scans for patterns, unspoken rules etched into the daily dance, who yields passage in the market, how merchants signal trust or suspicion, the subtle bows and nods that tip power balances. It feels like learning a foreign language without a guide, where a misplaced smile or a delayed step can mean exclusion or worse. The marketplace teems with life, a swirl of color and sound. Women in rough linen barter fiercely over bundles of turnips. Men laden with sacks measure their words as carefully as their coins. Children dart through shadows, their laughter fierce and raw. She observes how trust is earned slowly, through small favors, shared labor, consistent presence, and how social status divides sharply, visible in the texture of cloth, the cleanness of a face, the firmness of a handshake. Her modern assumptions about equality and transparency clash uncomfortably with these rigid codes. She longs for honest explanation, for straightforward connection, but here hints and implications guide all. Still, her analytical skills become a quiet asset. She notes which merchants rely on alliances, which trades are whispered, and which shouted. She learns to read hesitation not as fear, but as social caution, to offer help with humility rather than assertion. When she helps repair a rickety cartwheel, it is not just a mechanical fix, but a carefully timed gesture that opens guarded smiles. Outside, the distant toll of church bells marks time, reminders of looming threats. War inches closer, plague still whispers in the alleys, and the city braces. Each exchange echoes in the thin air, a thread woven into the fragile tapestry holding life together. She senses the weight of these social codes, not as barriers alone, but as survival tools, adaptations to a world raw and uncertain. As twilight fades over slate rooftops and smoking chimneys, she feels exhaustion seep into her bones, a mix of cold, effort, and unrelenting alertness. Yet beneath the fatigue, a quiet understanding grows, that survival in this era demands more than skill or knowledge. It asks for patience, respect, and the slow building of bridges through rough hands and honest words. The complexity unsettles but also fascinates, carving space within her modern mind for something older, steadier, and deeply human. The diffuse glow of sunlight filters through stained glass, casting fractured pools of rich blues and reds across ancient stone floors. The cool air within the cathedral feels still and sacred, carrying the faint scent of beeswax candles, damp stone, and the subtle musk of worn wood pews. She runs a hand along the rough, chiseled surface of a pillar, fingers tracing centuries of devotion and craftsmanship. Around her, hushed breaths mingle with the soft rustle of robes and the muted echoes of footsteps reverberating beneath vaulted ceilings. This place breathes differently, an intersection of human toil, faith, and artistry that dwarfs the noise and grime of the city outside. She is 19, thrown from a world of fleeting digital fame into medieval Paris, suddenly a visitor in a world where cathedrals are lifelines and statements as much as places of worship. Her modern-day profession, an influencer's digital craft, feels brittle in the face of such tangible endurance. Yet here, inside these hallowed walls, her engineer's eye sparks to life, wondering at the structural ingenuity, the play of light and shadow through glass assembled without modern tools, the careful balance of architectural forces harnessed to reach heavenward. The cathedral's shadow stretches far beyond itself, shaping the rhythm of the city and the lives of those who dwell beneath its watchful gaze. The guilds, the clergy, the artisans, they all move within its orbit, bound by codes older than memory. You notice the subtle signs exchanged between workers repairing sculptures, how the head mason signals the stonecutter with a tilt of the head, how the organist's fingers hover hesitantly before each hymn. These are small acts of trust and mastery, the social scaffolding of a world where knowledge is power and patience a necessity. Outside, the city churns with urgent fears, plague whispering through the alleys, soldiers marching toward distant wars, and the heavy toll of mortality felt in every cough and every closed door. The cathedral offers respite, not just physical but spiritual and communal. Inside, the sunlight pouring through colored glass fractures worries into fragments, illuminating mosaic patterns underfoot and hinting at a beauty that persists amid hardship. She studies the stained glass, each pane a miniature story painted in fire and lead, marvels at the craftsmanship shaped by hands familiar with suffering and hope. Her engineer's mind contemplates how advances in glass-making and kiln temperatures made such luminosity possible, marveling at the slow accumulation of knowledge wrested from trial, error, and artistry. Here, progress and faith intertwine. Her own modern assumptions, expectations of speed, comfort, clarity, court frustration. The cathedral's grandeur is slow, painstaking, and incomplete, its beauty built over lifetimes, not moments. Yet as she stands bathed in kaleidoscopic light, a quiet calm seeps into her bones. The pulse of this ancient place whispers a lesson, that endurance, like light through glass, refracts hardship into reflection, and that sometimes the slowest processes birth the most profound beauty. The week ends with her silent contemplation beneath soaring arches, the weight of centuries settling softly around her. Fatigue lingers, but so does a burgeoning understanding. The past's grandeur is not in conquest or spectacle alone, but in the patient weaving of stone, light, and human resilience, a tapestry she now walks within, one breath at a time. The steady tap of worn leather boots against uneven cobblestones rings through the chilly morning air, blending with the distant calls of merchants unfurling their stalls, and the faint clatter of wooden carts rolling cautiously over stone. You feel the gritty texture of dust stirred by footsteps, mingled with the faint, sour scent of damp earth, and the sharp tang of burning peat from nearby hearths. Each step carries a weight you haven't fully owned yet, the slow, deliberate rhythm of a city waking into its daily battle for survival. She, 19 and once tethered tightly to the hum of notifications and curated moments, now moves through this medieval Paris like someone finding her footing in a world built on raw edges and unyielding stone. The incessant clamor, the smells of sweat and smoke, the crowded streets pressing in, it's overwhelming. But this week, beneath the heaviness, a subtle shift begins to unfurl. The first flicker of belonging. Your engineering mind, trained to analyze systems and patterns, starts noticing the pulse beneath the chaos. How the market's flow adjusts as carts circumvent bundles of straw. How traders exchange nods and glances to signal alliances. How the church bells segment the day, ringing life into structured intervals amid uncertainty. Each sensory detail becomes a piece of a puzzle, a map of interactions, dependencies, and survival tactics you once ignored in the gloss of modern life. You trace the course of your footsteps along the Seine's muddy banks, watching how the city breathes and reacts. The smell of fresh bread baking intertwines with the sulphurous hint of blacksmith forges, and the laughter of children dodging between stalls resonates alongside the cries of hawkers. Amid rumors of the plague's slow creep and news of soldiers, distant marches, you sense how fragile yet tenacious life remains here. Your skills become small anchors in this foreign rhythm. Applying logic to repair a broken wheel, easing tensions between wary vendors with simple acts of reason, or recalling hygiene measures that could quiet fears of contagion. Each gesture builds trust, brick by brick. You realize that belonging is less about grand gestures and more about these repeated, reliable connections forged through effort and patience. As evening falls, shadows stretch long over the worn stones, and the marketplace's din softens into murmurs. Your body aches with unfamiliar fatigue, but within it, a quiet satisfaction stirs. The fractured light filtering through narrow alleyways touches your face like a tentative embrace. Less a stranger now, more a thread woven into Paris's tangled fabric. You wonder how much of your past self will dissolve in this slow, demanding world, and what constancy lies hidden in the repeated footsteps along these ancient stones. The answer feels elusive, yet essential as you lean into the rhythm of a city that, despite its darkness and harshness, begins to feel like home. The faint rustle of parchment stirs the heavy hush of the dim chamber, mingling with the faint mustiness of aged vellum and the flicker of candlelight struggling against shadowed walls. The air carries a delicate smoke from the smoldering wick, punctuated by the sharp tang of ink and the faint aroma of melting wax seals. She traces trembling fingers over letters formed in ink centuries old, the rough texture of the pages grounding her in a realm where knowledge is both treasure and danger. Every whispered breath seems to ripple, with the weight of secrets hidden beneath the dust and silence. She is 19, cast from a world of instant information into medieval Paris, where books are rare relics jealously guarded, and where the pursuit of forbidden knowledge risks far more than scorn. Her modern mind, trained in the precision of engineering and the logic of science, wrestles with the reverence and fear surrounding these fragile texts. She flicks through manuscripts, blurred script, illuminated initials, aware that each word could change understanding or provoke wrath. The knowledge here is fragile and powerful, a currency exchanged quietly amid suspicion and strict control by clergy and scholars. Her fingers linger on diagrams resembling rudimentary engineering sketches, struggles to decipher the schematic logic hidden in ornate calligraphy. Her modern experience with blueprints and problem-solving awakens a hunger to learn and preserve, yet she treads carefully. The thin line between curiosity and heresy is a shadow she cannot ignore. A folded leaf contains notes in faded ink, possible remedies, mechanical designs, clues to a world where science, faith, and superstition clash and intertwine. Around her, the murmured warnings of guardians and the furtive glances of monks remind her of the dangers tied to knowledge. Censorship and fear are real, and discovery here can mean exile, imprisonment, or worse. She senses the fragile balance maintained between progress and preservation, the slow, careful advance of understanding weighed against the power structures that command silence. Her skills might offer protection, cataloging, precise replication, but only if wielded with discretion and respect. Outside, the city wrestles with threats both mortal and unseen: plague specter, war's rumble, the grinding poverty shadowing daily existence. In this sanctuary of whispered secrets, she glimpses the stirrings of ideas that could transcend centuries, yet knows that silence often shields as much as it suffocates. The candle burns low, flickering almost to extinction, as she folds delicate pages and hides the knowledge once more. Her thoughts drift toward the paradox, this hunger to uncover, tethered to the necessity of concealment. The fatigue of hidden yearning presses alongside the exhilaration of discovery. In this twilight space between illumination and shadow, she realizes that knowledge is a fragile gift, both liberator and prison. The journey ahead demands not only intellect but patience, courage, and a keen sense of timing, a lesson she must learn as the candle's last glow fades into darkness. The bitter, sour sting of sickness hangs heavy in the cramped room, mingling with the sharp tang of herbs boiled in a cracked pot and the faint sweetness of bruised apples left to rot on a wooden table. The dry rattle of labored breaths echoes beneath the low ceiling, punctuated by coughs that scratch raw through heavy chests. She crouches beside the frail form lying on straw-strewn floorboards, feeling the clammy heat radiate beneath her fingertips and the faint pulse fluttering in a wrist too weak to hold firm. The scent of disease is pervasive, wrapping around everything like a shroud, relentless and unforgiving. She is 19, ripped from a future of sanitized hospitals and advanced medicine, thrust into 1350 Paris, where plague shadows every breath, every touch. Her nursing instincts flare, calculations of temperature, hydration, signs of infection, while her modern knowledge clashes bitterly with the crude remedies and fragile beliefs surrounding her. There is a tincture, a mixture brewed from crushed herbs, honey, and a whispered hope that could ease suffering or hasten death. She weighs the cost of action and inaction, torn between hope and fear. Her mind, trained in logic and care, reverberates with conflicting lessons. She recalls antiseptics and antibiotics, sterile gloves and strict hygiene protocols, measures impossible here, where water is scarce and superstition shapes choices. The patient's shallow breaths remind her that survival is as much a prayer as a science in this delicate balance. Around her, anxious faces flicker in candlelight, shadows dancing over worried eyes. Each attempt at comfort feels small and fragile, a thread between life and finality. In the marketplace beyond, rumors of the plague's advancement mix with the clamor of daily struggle. Peasants barter in fear, priests murmur prayers, and soldiers pass grim-faced through muddy streets. The years ahead promise battles not only with invaders, but with the invisible scourge that has already stolen so much. You sense how knowledge is a double-edged sword, powerful yet dangerous, caught between healing and helplessness. She uses her engineering mindset to improvise. Gentler splints fashioned from broken wood, clean cloth folded to catch fevered sweat, simpler ways to bring water and warmth. Yet the limits gnaw at her. No matter the science, the plague defies certainty. Each moment spent near sickness deepens her fatigue, a blend of physical strain and the heavy weight of moral uncertainty. At night, in the cold quiet, she contemplates the fragility of life and the burden of choice. The city's heartbeat slows, but never stops. The past unfolds in rhythms harsh and true. Her body aches, but her mind lingers on the stark truth that, sometimes, to save one is to risk many, and the line between hope and despair is thinner than breath. The sharp crack of thunder splits the cold night air, the fleeting flash of lightning casting stark shadows over the narrow alleyways slick with rain. The heavy scent of wet earth rises, mixed with wood smoke, and the faint metallic tang of iron tools left unused in workshops. She stands crouched beneath a crumbling stone arch, damp cloak clinging to her skin, heart pounding against the steady rhythm of the storm. Around her, muffled footsteps and hurried whispers ripple through damp streets, carrying urgency laced with fear. Tonight, decisions will ripple far beyond this solitary moment. She is 19, an influencer ripped from the certainty of modern life and plunged into the harsh, precarious world of 1350 Paris, where every choice balances on the knife edge between survival and ruin. Tonight, she grapples with a decision charged with danger, to share a piece of forbidden knowledge, a crude but promising herbal remedy that could save lives but risks drawing deadly suspicion from church authorities and wary neighbors. Her engineer's mind pulses through risk assessments, weighing benefits against consequences in cold calculation, even as emotion claws at her resolve. The air is thick with tension, bruised by the distant tolling of bells, warnings of curfew, illness, or unrest. She remembers tales of those accused of heresy, of healers silenced and burned, and the fragile thread that separates care from condemnation. Yet she cannot ignore the raw suffering she's witnessed, the weak clutching for breath, the hollow eyes of the starving. This remedy, born of simple botany and tempered by her blending of modern understanding with medieval lore, offers hope, flickering against overwhelming darkness. Her hands shake as she retrieves the gathered herbs, yarrow, elderflower, crushed garlic, ingredients whispered about but feared. The preparation demands precision, a balance of heat and timing to coax relief without harm. She feels the weight of her past life pressing down. Scientific clarity grappling with centuries-old fear and silence. Stealing time for this, forging trust with wary villagers, requires more than knowledge. It demands courage layered over uncertainty. Outside, rain intensifies, drumming like a verdict on rooftops. She moves quietly through shadowed streets, the remedy concealed beneath her cloak, aware of every watchful eye and every step that could betray her. This act is more than medicine. It is rebellion against despair, a spark cast into the night with fragile hands. At dawn, exhaustion washes over her, not just physical, but the deep fatigue of bearing secrets that could alter fate. She wonders how often courage is a whisper against thunder, how survival depends on bold flashes in darkness. The city slumbers uneasily while she waits, knowing that this small, dangerous choice might ripple through lifetimes or fade silently into the storm. The thick scent of oil and fresh-cut wood mixes with the earthy aroma of scattered straw in the cramped workshop. The steady scrape of rough tools against grain scars the air, while the intermittent hiss of heated metal meeting cold water punctuates the quiet. Your fingers brush against a crude wooden contraption, its worn edges smooth from endless use. The heat from the forge still lingers on your cheeks, a stark contrast to the cool draft slipping through the cracked window. It is here, among the smell of sweat and iron, that you wrestle with the weight of change, not just in wood and metal, but in the fragile balance of power held quietly in each innovation. You are 19, a modern influencer stranded amid 1350 Paris's relentless demands, caught between worlds. Your engineer's mind seeks solutions in efficiency and improvement, favoring progress with clear benefits. But each small invention, the strengthened cartwheel, the improved pulley system, the modified water pump, ripples far beyond metal and mechanics. You see how these changes upset customs, economies, even alliances. The old guard eyes you warily. Some whisper about witchcraft or dangerous knowledge, while others watch eagerly, hungry for advantage. Your skills ripple subtly through the city's fabric, sometimes woven with gratitude, other times frayed by suspicion. Outside, Paris bristles with tension. Soldiers patrol with heavy boots, the plague's cold shadow lingers, and the church's gaze weighs heavily on any hint of rebellion or change. The marketplace buzzes with guarded deals and sharp glances, where every invented tool becomes another thread in a complex web of survival and control. You feel the sting of responsibility, realizing modern innovation here is no simple gift. It's a force that can heal or harm, elevate or destroy. Your hands, steady from past calculations, now weigh each creation not just by utility but by cost. The increased load your new cart design carries can strain poorly built roads and fray old contracts. The water pump you helped rebuild might alter labor patterns, freeing some but leaving others anxious and displaced. You recall ancient chronicles whispered in corners, how inventions changed kingdoms, but also toppled dynasties. Technology, you see, is never neutral here. It is power, concealed, and volatile. Fatigue creeps into your bones after long days of repairing, convincing, battling unseen fears. The grime on your skin and the ache in your fingers remind you that change is hard-earned and often contested. The city, with its grit and shadows, teaches a relentless lesson. Progress demands more than ideas. It calls for patience, diplomacy, and a fierce acceptance of unintended consequences. As dusk falls and lanterns flicker to life, you pause by a cracked mirror, your reflection muted and worn. The youth who sought to reshape this past feels smaller now, humbled by the weight of hidden power. Yet within that burden lies a fragile hope, that even here, amid shadows and suspicion, small sparks of change might yet kindle a brighter dawn. The thick, pungent scent of spilled wine, crushed fruit, and fresh herbs fills the bustling market square, battling with the sharper tones of wood smoke and sweat. Shouts and laughter rise above the rhythmic thud of leather boots on worn cobblestones, while merchants' cries weave in and out of the chatter, trading promises, threats, and bargains. You feel the uneven dirt and straw mixed beneath your feet, dusty and uneven, as you step carefully through the crowd, the heat of bodies pressing close and the cool shade of scattered stalls shifting with the sun. She, 19, torn from a world of filtered light and constant connectivity and dropped into the raw chaos of 1350 Paris, now stands at the heart of the market, where fates twist in unexpected ways. Here, beneath the open sky and fickle gods, your modern skills, engineers' precision and logical thinking, begin to ripple through the daily grind, small shifts that ripple far beyond your understanding. The reinforced cartwheel you designed saves a vendor hours of backbreaking labor, altering her day's earnings, and, subtly, the curve of her future. The repaired pulley system transports goods more efficiently, earning wary nods, but also stirring unspoken tensions with those threatened by changing routines. You watch the delicate dance of commerce, the hawking, the careful weighing of silver, the swift calculations of risk and reward. Trust is scarce currency. Every gesture measured against survival. Your suggestions are met with a mixture of gratitude and suspicion. Some embrace change as salvation. Others view it as dangerous disruption. You sense the delicate balance, advancing the machinery of daily life while navigating a lattice of alliances, grudges, and fear. Beyond the market's vibrant pulse, the city whispers of war's looming drum, plague's cruel shadow, and the church's unyielding gaze. The weight of these threats presses invisibly, shaping every interaction, every choice. You see how innovation here is never neutral. It is entangled in power, survival, and the fragile hope for better days. The taste of risk lingers on your tongue like burnt bread, bitter but necessary. Each success feels tempered by the caution born of knowing that progress can fracture as easily as it builds. As the sun sinks low, casting long shadows over carts and wares, you feel the subtle tremor of change coursing through the streets, the impact of your touch, uncertain and profound. When night finally falls and the market quiets, your body aches from exertion, but your mind races with possibility and fear. The city sleeps uneasy, its future now gently shaped by the choices you have set in motion. A fragile weave of hope and caution, a reminder that even small hands can steer vast tides, for better or worse. The thick, heavy scent of wet earth rises sharply as rain softens the streets, turning cobblestones into a slick, muddy canvas. Your boots press into the cold, sticky ground, each step leaving a deep imprint that quickly blurs beneath the shuffle of passing feet and scurrying animals. The air hums with the murmurs of traders packing their stalls, the distant clatter of wagon wheels struggling through narrow alleys, and the faint, acrid smoke of fires preparing the morning's meals. Around you, Paris breathes, alive with motion and the endless interplay of lives caught in uncertainty. She is 19, pulled from a digital world pulsing with instant connection and dropped into this turbulent moment in 1350 Paris, where every footprint in the mud traces a path of consequence. Her engineering mind tracks the unseen ripples caused by her earlier actions. Small inventions, simple adjustments, gestures that now weave into the city's complex fabric. The vendor whose cart now moves smoother, the neighbors whose scarce water supply she refined. Each change shifts balance, unnoticed by many yet vital to the survival of others. You observe a young woman carrying firewood with less strain, a merchant's wary glance softening when he sees you approach. The webs of trust and suspicion entangle tightly here. Your efforts to ease burdens are met with gratitude shadowed by quiet wariness. Your modern assumptions about progress as an unequivocal good wrestle with the nuance of these fragile ecosystems, where change can alienate as much as empower. The market's energy is raw and unpredictable. Calls rise and fall in pitch. Barter sharpens into negotiation. Children dart with grubby hands, and the scent of baking bread tempers the harshness of toil. Beyond the daily struggles, whispers ripple of battles beyond the city's gates, of the unseen plague's slow creeping touch, and of the church's watchful presence. Your innovations, however practical, stir currents among cautious eyes, shifting social balances and unsettling old patterns. The mud underfoot mirrors the uncertainty threading through every decision. Each footprint is a choice etched into time, small risks and quiet hopes marking the slow transformation of lives intertwined. As dusk tints the sky with bruised purples and grays, you pause, tracing your fingers through clumps of sticky earth, feeling how even the tiniest shifts set extending waves. The weariness gathers in your limbs, a mix of toil and the burden of unintended consequences. Yet beneath fatigue lies a tentative grace, the recognition that survival here is a conversation across days and dangers, and that belonging is carved not by grand designs, but by the patient tracing of footprints through mud. The sharp tang of spilled ale, mixed with the earthy scent of wet wood and unwashed bodies, fills the cramped tavern where voices rise and fall in uneasy rhythm. The scrape of stools along stone floors, the clink of crude wooden cups, and the low hum of whispered grievances weave a tapestry of tension thick enough to taste. You feel the rough grain of the table beneath your palm, worn smooth by years of hands both weary and desperate, as the harsh glow of an oil lamp flickers against faces shadowed in conflicting emotions. She is 19, a figure caught between epochs, an influencer thrust into the gritty depths of 1350 Parisian life, where loyalty and suspicion can turn friends into foes overnight. The lessons of her modern world, transparent communication and social connectedness, feel fragile here, where a misunderstood act or unintended consequence can ripple into discord. Her engineering mind, precise and systematic, struggles to untangle the web of strained alliances forming around a recent intervention. A new water distribution system designed to ease labor has instead bred envy and unrest among those whose roles are changing. Around her, heated glances and curt exchanges signal fractures widening beneath surface smiles. She watches as a trusted friend's eyes flash with betrayal, doubt shadowing his gestures when he traces the new water pipes winding beneath the marketplace. The ripple effects of innovation echo unpredictably. Some praise the lightened burdens, others grumble at lost status or disrupted routines. The careful balance of relationships shifts like mud beneath booted feet, and she senses the fragile thread holding these bonds together fraying alarmingly. The city's bruised edges press inward, news of distant battles, the persistent grip of plague, and the ever-watchful eyes of church authorities loom over their daily struggles. Each interaction carries weight. Every decision reflects not only on survival but on acceptance within a community wary of change. Your modern assumptions about simple progress falter against this complex social landscape, where power and tradition intertwine deeply. As evening deepens, the tavern's warmth becomes a crucible of conflicting loyalties and silent reckonings. She feels the exhaustion carving lines deeper than fatigue, the toll of carrying responsibility for consequences unseen but profoundly felt. In this tightening circle of trust and tension, she understands that change here is never merely technical, it is a force reshaping hearts and histories alike. When the oil lamp guttering casts the last flicker, you sit with the weight of divided friendships and uncertain futures pressing close. The lesson settles quietly. In any age, human connection demands patience, humility, and the willingness to endure the difficult echoes of even the smallest actions. The faint sting of smoke lingers in the chilly morning air, mingling with the damp earth and the faint sweetness of crushed herbs trampled underfoot. Beneath your feet, the cold, uneven cobblestones throb with the weight of countless unseen footsteps, worn smooth by centuries of passage. The soft rustle of distant market stalls unrolling echoes faintly, while the melancholy toll of a distant church bell marks the solemn rhythm of the day. You trace your fingers over a brittle scrap of parchment, its edges frayed by time and carelessness, bearing the faint marks of ink now blurred and faded, a fragile testament to knowledge both wielded and lost. You are 19, a modern influencer thrust centuries back, wrestling with the shadows cast by your own small attempts at change. The butterfly effect pulses quietly beneath every gesture here, every decision branching into consequences that ripple unpredictably through lives that never expected interference. Your engineering mind, sharp and reasoned, reflects on innovations shared, a repaired water wheel here, an improved farming tool there, once sources of hope now tangled with regret as unforeseen harm emerges among those you sought to aid. Around you, murmurs stir of missed harvests, linked to a new irrigation system. Disputes flare between neighbors displaced by altered water flows. Distrust festers where trust was fragile. Faces once warm with gratitude tighten with suspicion or pain. You feel the aching burden of invisible damage, the heavy gravity of choices made without full understanding. The past is less forgiving than data-driven simulations. Here, humanity folds into every equation, unpredictable and raw. The city's shadow looms, whispers of plagues, distant wars, and the lifetimes caught between faith and superstition. Your modern assumptions about progress and control stumble against a world governed by fragile social tapestries and inherited traditions. You understand now that knowledge without context can wound as deeply as ignorance, and that every action carries a silent price. Night deepens, candlelight flickering weakly against stone walls. You sit alone, fingers tracing the scars of your own making, heart heavy with unspoken accountability. The fatigue here transcends the body, woven with uncertainty, fear, and a deep yearning for redemption. The quiet harm done is a haunting teacher, reminding you that survival demands not only resilience and innovation, but humility to reckon with the shadows your choices cast. As sleep beckons, you carry a delicate truth forward. Living in another time is not simply about adapting, but about accepting the weight of unforeseen consequences and the enduring complexity of human lives touched, willingly or not, by the butterfly's wing. The cold rain falls steadily, biting through thin wool and slicking the uneven cobbles beneath your boots. The air is thick with the damp smell of wet stone and muddy earth, punctuated by the sharp aroma of peat smoke curling from chimney tops. Around you, the muffled murmur of a waking city seeps through the dripping gutters and wind-whipped flags, carrying the weight of heavy skies and unspoken fears. Your fingers tremble slightly as they clutch a soaked bundle of those fragile papers, blueprints, notes, and sketches that carry the burden of changed lives. She is 19, displaced from a world of immediate answers into the slow, relentless uncertainty of Paris in 1350. The sharp edge of responsibility cuts deep as you realize the consequences of your actions. Small innovations and interventions once seen as hopeful solutions now ripple unpredictably through the lives of those around you. The repaired water wheel that eased labor now threatens to shift power balances, The improved cart mechanisms have disrupted marketplace alliances, and whispers of jealousy and suspicion grow louder beneath the pattering rain. Your engineer's mind races through calculations, not of physics alone, but of human networks, fragile and intricate. You see how trust fractures, how gratitude turns fragile under fear, how survival binds tightly to tradition, even as necessity demands change. The rain soaks through your cloak, but the chill inside is deeper. The cold sweat born of moral burden and sleepless nights spent considering the unseen costs of progress. The city's heartbeat is erratic. Rumors of war and illness pulse like distant drums, fanning the flames of distrust. You feel the weight of these fears pressing close, shaping shadows in alleys and tightening faces in the marketplace. Each decision and its fallout draws you deeper into this tangled web of consequence and choice. You pause beneath a sagging porch, tracing the soaked edges of your plans, every drop melting the certainty you once held. Your hands, roughened by work and rain, brood over the fractures your presence has sown. Quiet arguments behind closed doors, alliances fraying like worn fabric. Fatigue settles into your bones, thick and heavy, while resolve hardens like forged iron. As dusk tips the sky into gray, and the city's lamps sputter to life against the encroaching dark, you stand solitary and rain-soaked, accepting that survival here is not just about knowledge or skill. It is about carrying the weight of impact, living with difficult consequences, and finding the strength to move forward beneath ever-falling storms. The thick scent of damp wool and faintly sour ale clings to the cramped room, where voices linger like tension in the air. The rough texture of a worn wooden table presses beneath your fingertips, its surface scarred by years of hurried plans and long-forgotten meals. Outside, the murmur of the marketplace seeps faintly through narrow windows, a distant blend of bartering cries, clattering carts, and restless footsteps on cobblestones slick with recent rain. You feel the weight of strained glances and folded arms across the table, the subtle shifts of unspoken grievances threading through the quiet room. She is 19, caught between centuries, an Instagram influencer thrust into the gritty reality of medieval Paris. The alliances she built in hope now fray, tangled in the complex web of survival and suspicion. Her engineering mind, once confident in the clarity of design and logic, finds new challenges here. Relationships as delicate and intricate as any mechanism, prone to corrosion by fear and misunderstanding. The water channel she improved eases labor for some, but breeds jealousy in others. The repaired wagon wheels save journeys but unsettle old partnerships. Around her, old friends edge away, their faces hardened by necessity and loss. The trust once freely given now demands proof, a rare commodity in times shadowed by plague, war, and scarcity. She senses conversations ceasing as she approaches, the subtle narrowing of eyes and tightness in voices. Each gesture is weighted, every smile measured. Her attempts to mediate, to offer practical solutions, sometimes stir defensiveness rather than relief. Outside, the city breathes its heavy burdens, whispers of raids, the slow advance of disease, the church's ever-watchful gaze. Every small action resonates widely. You realize that knowledge and skill offer no immunity from the delicate societal balances that dictate who survives and who falls. The past's silent rules resist change as fiercely as the elements. In this crucible of fraying ties, she learns patience and the bitter cost of trust lost and regained. The fatigue is not just of the body but of the heart, worn thin by the struggle to belong and to be understood. As night deepens, the room's shadows lengthen, and she sits quietly, tracing the outlines of fractured bonds. Her thoughts settle on the truth that survival here is not only about invention or will, but about empathy and endurance in relationships forged under pressure. The fragile dance of human connection becomes the greatest challenge, a lesson lived one cautious step at a time. The faint crackle of dry wood feeds the hearth's growing flame, casting flickering shadows that dance across rough timber beams and worn stone walls. The scent of burning oak mingles with the sweet tang of herbs steeping nearby and the faint smoke that curls upward through the thatched roof scaps. She feels the steady warmth radiate against chilled skin, a welcome contrast to the biting cold that clings to the narrow streets outside. Around her, low murmurs rise and fall, soft breaths, the scrape of wooden stools, and the gentle rustle of coarse cloth as bodies draw closer seeking comfort. She is 19, an influencer displaced from vibrant digital worlds and thrust into the harsh reality of 1350 Paris, where moments of tenderness are as fragile as they are treasured. Your modern self, trained in analysis and precision, now recognizes love as a quiet, resilient force, a balm against the relentless struggle of survival. The man beside you, strong hands calloused from labor, eyes tired yet steady, moves closer in the dim glow, their unspoken connection weaving a delicate thread amid uncertainty. Outside, the city grapples with challenges, plague's lingering shadow, whispered threats of war, the grinding poverty carved into every stone. Yet inside this humble, hearth-lit space, you experience a breath of humanity's enduring warmth. You note the subtle exchanges, the careful touch of his hand smoothing your hair, the shared silence filled with cautious hope, the way trust grows not in grand gestures, but in steadfast presence. Your nursing instincts urge gentleness. Your engineering mindset sees relationships as fragile systems requiring patience and care. Amid this closeness, you feel the tension between past and present, the urgency of modern connection tempered by medieval caution. Affection here is coated with pragmatism but no less real, born from the need for alliance, protection, and fleeting joy. The hardship sharpening lines on faces outside fades briefly, replaced by the soft glow of shared quiet. As night deepens, embers glow low and the world narrows to whispered breaths and lingering glances. Your body aches from the day's toils, but in this tender space, that ache entwines with a new kind of strength, the courage to seek softness amid stone walls and shadowed alleys. Before sleep claims you, a thought lingers, that love, fragile yet fierce, persists across centuries and hardship. It demands vulnerability and resilience alike, teaching that even in the harshest times, the human heart can carve a refuge of warmth and light. The cold stone presses hard beneath your fingers, rough and biting against your skin, as you sit alone beside the flickering shadow of a solitary candle. The faint smell of damp earth seeps through the cracks of the wooden door, mixed with the lingering bitterness of stale bread and faint incense from a distant chapel. Around you, the muted sounds of a city settling into night. Whispers, footsteps on uneven cobbles, a faint creak of timber, all weave a quiet backdrop to the storm swirling inside. Your mind drifts, caught between two worlds, between memories that feel both distant and achingly immediate. She is 19, a modern soul trapped in medieval Paris, carrying a past as sharp and complicated as the rough fabric of her worn cloak. The familiar pulse of digital life is gone, replaced by the tactile, unfiltered weight of this time. Your engineering logic tries to organize it, memories like data points, emotions like code to decipher, but the rawness resists containment. You struggle with the sharp contrasts, the warmth of past connections versus the cold isolation of this world, the security of known paths against the perilous uncertainty here. Your hands recall the feel of sleek glass and soft plastic, now traded for coarse linen and cracked wood. Faces from your past flicker like ghosts, friends whose laughter once rippled through light-filled rooms, now haunted by the grime and caution etched into the faces around you. The contrasts weigh heavy, Technology's promises versus survival's cruel necessities, meaning shaped by followers versus meaning forged in shared hardship. You observe how your modern assumptions sometimes misfire, how your efforts to help clash with customs rooted in fear or tradition. Your nurse's instincts urge care and openness. The engineer within seeks order amid flux, but the past demands patience beneath its harsh surface. You watch villagers react to your suggestions with a mix of gratitude and suspicion, recalling how trust is built slowly, often mended from fragile cracks left by misunderstanding. Outside, the city's breath grows quiet, but inside, your thoughts churn like a turbulent river, loss and hope, belonging and alienation. The ache of separation is both physical and spiritual, a tension between what was and what is. You feel the rough texture of memory pressing against your present skin, a reminder that living fully here means learning to carry both worlds without breaking. As sleep beckons, the flickering candle casts shifting shadows over tired eyes. The past is a companion, both comforting and challenging, a tangled thread woven into your new life's fabric. You realize that adaptation is less about forgetting and more about embracing complexity, the resilience to hold conflicting truths, and the courage to move forward beneath skies both old and new. The faint crackle of a fire mingles with the soft rustle of coarse cloth and low murmurs that weave through the dim warmth of the cramped room. The scent of burning wood blends with the earthy dampness lingering in the cold corners, touched by the faint, sweet aroma of herbal teas steeping nearby. You feel the rough texture of the wooden bench beneath your palms, its surface scarred by the lives pressed into it. Around you, sighs and tentative laughter ripple gently, small sound waves carrying the fragile promise of belonging in a world that offers little certainty. She is 19, torn from the polished glow of a digital life, and cast into 1350 Paris's raw, unyielding reality. Here, among worn faces and weathered hands, she discovers that family is not merely a bond of blood, but a cautious, deliberate weaving of trust and care. Her nursing instincts blend with an engineer's problem-solving acuity as she tends to wounds both physical and unseen, mended clothes, shared food, the quiet companionship that fills empty spaces. The cramped shelter, a patchwork sanctuary of wood and cloth, echoes rhythms of new connections forming. Hands once hesitant reach out to steady, to comfort. Eyes once weary soften in unspoken understanding. The bitter scarcity outside sharpens these gestures, value, transforming small acts of kindness into lifelines. You watch as a child's tentative fingers grip your own, seeking anchor amid the storm of uncertainty, and feel the fragile weight of responsibility settle deep within. Outside, the harshness of city life presses close. Plague's shadow lingers, the distant drumbeat of conflict resonates, and everyday struggle gnaws at hope. Yet here, in the flickering firelight, moments of respite emerge. A shared meal savored despite its meagerness, whispered stories passing between breaths, and the overlapping warmth of bodies seeking comfort against the cold night. Your modern assumptions about connection, family, and care are tested, reshaped. You learn that survival in this time demands more than knowledge and skill. It requires vulnerability and the courage to build relationships piece by piece, to offer trust when it is a rare and precious gift. Each shared silence becomes a thread. Each gentle touch weaves a fragile tapestry against the relentless weight of hardship. As the night deepens and the fire's glow wanes, exhaustion gathers soft and steady. Yet within the quiet embrace of this newfound family, a tender strength takes root. A reminder that even amid ruin and fear, the human heart seeks and at times finds warmth and belonging. The sharp scent of wet stone and burning peat fills the early morning air as you step onto the cobbled street, the uneven surfaces slick with last night's rain. The low murmur of merchants setting up their stalls blends with the distant clatter of carts and the quiet rustle of linen and wool. You feel the texture of rough-hewn timber beneath your hand as you steady yourself, against a market stall, the day's chill pressing into your bones. Around you, Paris wakes slowly, its pulse steady but strained beneath the weight of sickness, war, and survival. She is 19, carried across time from a world of instant connections into this gritty medieval city, where belonging is measured less in followers and more in shared labor and intertwined fates. You carry a modern mind, a nurse's empathy, an engineer's reasoning. But here, in these narrow streets and narrow hearts, belonging demands deeper commitments. Your hands, used to precise instruments and clean spaces, now blister against rough ropes and weathered tools. But you grasp that commitment is more than action. It is persistence, patience, and an acceptance of hardship. You watch as neighbors trade favors, help with firewood in exchange for a share of the evening meal, a repaired wheel swapped for a handful of grain. These exchanges knit a tentative network, fragile yet unyielding, a human web spun from necessity and trust. Your knowledge shapes these rhythms, organizing water distribution to prevent conflict, applying basic hygiene to soothe festering wounds, advising adjustments to farming tools to ease burdens. Small changes, but they echo through the daily workings of life. Outside the market's buzz, the shadows of war and plague linger like specters. The city's prayer bells toll steadily, calling for endurance and hope. You feel the steady beat underfoot, the heartbeat of a community resisting disintegration through shared struggle. Each conversation, each helping hand, becomes a thread woven into a tapestry of belonging. As the day wears on, fatigue settles deep, but alongside it grows a quiet strength. You sense that this world, harsh and unyielding, offers a different kind of connection, rooted not in choice or convenience, but in necessity and shared fate. The pulse of belonging beats in worn hands and tired eyes, in the grudging smiles exchanged beneath ash-gray skies. When evening falls and lanterns kindle flickering light, you pull your cloak closer against the chill. The city's pulse, once foreign, is now your own. The commitment to this fragile life, with all its pain and fleeting joys, anchors you in a time not your own, but slowly becoming home. The cool scent of damp earth and freshly turned soil drifts through the narrow streets, mingling with smoke from distant hearths and the faint sweetness of roasting chestnuts. The steady clatter of horse hooves on wet cobblestone breaks the soft murmur of early morning. Vendors setting up carts, cooks flicking ashes from fires, children laughing as they dart through alleys slick with mist. You feel the rough weave of your coarse wool cloak pressing against chilled skin, breath forming small clouds that drift and vanish into the heavy air. Somewhere beyond the fog, the Seine flows steady and indifferent, carrying the city's secrets downstream. She is 19 now, a figure suspended between worlds, an influencer stripped of screen and signal, facing a raw and unpredictable medieval present. Your engineer's mind races with possibilities and calculations, but your heart wrestles with the deeper question. Stay and root yourself in this harsh, shifting reality, or seek escape back to a future severed by time. The choice presses like weight on your chest, cold and unyielding as the stone beneath your feet. Around you, Paris unfolds in layered complexity, the marketplace buzzing with barter and suspicion, the church bells tolling salvation and dread, the laborers bracing against the coming winter's grip. Your skills, once sharpened for streamlined efficiency and comfort, are now tools of trust and survival, quietly mending broken carts, patching wells, easing weary muscles. Each act connects you more tightly to this world, its rhythms and rituals embedding deeper beneath your skin. Yet, the past's shadows tug at your thoughts, memories stained by loss and longing, the ease of vanished certainties, the flicker of a life paused and distant. You watch faces worn by hunger and hope, see the tenderness buried beneath hardened exteriors, feel the fragile pulse of community fighting to endure. The skyline blurs between stone chimneys and gray clouds, the future uncertain as the rivers flow. As twilight paints long fingers across the rooftops, exhaustion settles deep in your bones, a mixture of labor, fear, and unspoken wishes. The city breathes around you, alive with struggle and fragile joy. In this moment, you understand that belonging is neither swift nor simple. It is forged daily through choice and endurance, through embracing a world both foreign and familiar. You inhale the cold night, tasting its sharp clarity, and silently face the crossroads ahead. The past holds you as tightly as the future calls, and your footsteps, uncertain yet steady, mark the path you choose, even if it remains hidden beyond the next dawn. The heavy rumble of thunder rolls low over Paris, a distant drumbeat vibrating through the damp air thick with the scent of wet earth and burning peat. Lightning fractures the gray sky in fleeting bursts, illuminating narrow alleyways slick with rain and shadow. You feel the chill seep through your threadbare cloak as the wind shifts, carrying muted shouts and hurried footsteps from the city's restless heart. The weight of impending crisis settles like a stone in your stomach, a tremor beneath the surface of everyday life that promises to upend all you have come to know here. She is 19, an influencer uprooted from the certainty of digital connectedness to a world where news travels on whispered breath and heavy boots, and where survival hinges on grasping not just facts but the fragile threads of human trust. Tonight, your engineering mind races not with designs or calculations, but with urgent decisions shaped by fear and necessity. The city braces against approaching calamity, whether from a distant army's march, the unseen spread of the plague, or internal strife fueled by scarcity and suspicion, each threat a lightning bolt fracturing the delicate calm. You notice how your knowledge, a double-edged sword, both empowers and alienates. Your efforts to strengthen defenses, improve water supplies, or medicate the sick ripples unevenly through Paris's patchwork society. Some quietly welcome the aid. Others resist, fearful of change or wary of the unknown foreigner disrupting old balances. Your modern assumptions clatter against this raw world of shadows and hard choices, where alliances form and shatter like fragile glass, and where tomorrow remains an uncertain promise. Through rain-darkened streets you move with growing resolve, offering help where needed but learning when to step back, to listen rather than lead. The air crackles with unspoken tension. Neighbors' eyes cloud with worry. Merchants tighten their grip on wares. Children huddle closer to flickering fires. The past and present collide as familiar certainties dissolve, leaving you suspended between hope and fear. As night deepens and thunder fades into distant murmurs, your body feels the weight of relentless vigilance, the cold sweat of anxiety and exhaustion mingling. Yet within the storm of uncertainty, an ember of clarity glows. Survival demands not only strength and skill, but the grace to accept what cannot be controlled, the courage to hold your place even as the ground shifts beneath your feet. You breathe deeply, tasting the sharpness of rain and resolve, and realize that this crucible will reshape more than cities. It will forge the fragile core of your own identity, tempered like steel in the fire of relentless change. The metallic clang of steel against stone echoes sharply in the cool morning air, mingling with the gritty scent of oil and iron that tangles in your hair and clings to your skin. The rhythmic pounding reverberates through the cramped forge, while the sharp heat from the glowing coals presses against your face and hands. You feel the rough grip of a hammer, its weight familiar yet unfamiliar, guided now by the tension between fear and determination. Outside, distant shouts and the clang of armor signal the city's turbulent heartbeat, a reminder of dangers lurking just beyond these walls. She is 19, plucked from a world of polished screens and filtered light, thrust into the brutal reality of 1350 Paris, the forge a crucible not only of metal, but of survival and resolve. Your engineering mind maps out each strike, calculating the force needed to shape iron without shattering it, mirroring the mental balancing act of navigating alliances, threats, and necessities in a city on edge. The steel you craft is more than a tool. It is a shield in a time fraught with war, disease, and shifting loyalties. Around you, the blacksmith's sweat beads on furrowed brows, mixing with soot and stale smoke that hangs heavy in the air. The forge is a sanctuary and a battleground, where raw power meets fragile hopes. You sense how every hammer fall carves more than metal. It shapes the fragile armor protecting your newfound community. The tools you help repair, the weapons you strengthen, these acts ripple beyond the walls, touching the uneasy balance of daily life outside. The city vibrates with tension. Soldiers muster in distant squares. Plague's shadow drifts through alleys, and whispered fears thread conversations. Your modern assumptions about safety and control falter here. Protection comes from grit, readiness, and an unyielding spirit. You learn that determination is as vital as skill, a fierce pulse that steadies your hands and heart amidst chaos. As the day wanes and embers glow low beneath smudged faces, fatigue settles deep, but resolve holds firm. You understand that in this world, vulnerability invites peril, and strength is forged through resilience as much as force. The weight of survival presses hard but steady, forging you anew. Beneath the heavy sky, you grasp a raw truth. Facing threats demands more than courage. It requires enduring focus, the willingness to wield power wisely, and the silent hope that each strike will protect those who cannot defend themselves. The past is harsh, but within its fire, you find a fierce, unbreakable flame. The sharp tang of burned wood and the acrid scent of medicinal herbs fill the dim room, mingling with the faint, metallic, coppery smell of spilled blood. The flickering candlelight throws trembling shadows over pale, drawn faces, while the low, rasping breaths of the sick weave into the heavy silence. You press your hands against coarse linen bandages, feeling the warmth beneath your fingers and the faint tremor of life clinging stubbornly. Outside, the distant sound of church bells tolls a mournful rhythm, echoing the weight settling deep within your chest. She is 19, an influencer ripped from a world of instant responses and virtual connections, now swallowed by the harsh unpredictability of 1350 Paris. Your mind, trained in logic and care, grapples with decisions bound in pain and sacrifice, choices that reshape not only the lives of others, but carve new contours in your very self. The tools and knowledge from your modern life clash with the brutal reality, limited resources, rampant disease, fragile hope. A fevered child lies trembling. A strained mother watches with hollow eyes. You hold a bitter tincture, the culmination of your makeshift skills blending medieval lore and modern understanding. The choice looms: administer and risk unknown side effects, or withhold and watch suffering deepen. The uncertainty is a knife's edge, and your resolve hardens in the sting of responsibility. Outside, the city pulses with turmoil. Plague whispers, rumors of war, and the church's penetrating gaze tighten their grip on everyday life. Each act of care becomes fraught with risk, every moment shadowed by the fragile balance between life and death. Your efforts to heal, to comfort, to ease, bear fruit and sorrow in equal measure. The patient's labored breath slows, the faint rise and fall marking tentative victory or bittersweet respite. Exhaustion settles into your limbs, but deeper still lies the ache of transformation, losing parts of yourself while forging new strength. The past's rhythm is relentless, demanding sacrifice beyond the physical. It calls for surrender and courage entwined. As darkness envelops the city and the soft whisper of prayers rise, you recognize the fragile truth. Survival and selfhood are woven through choice and loss, through the sharp edges of love and grief. The weeks ahead promise no refuge. only the hardening of heart and will beneath ever-falling shadows. The damp, musty air of the dimly lit chamber presses close, thick with the mingled scents of old parchment, spilled ink, and the faint smokiness of beeswax candles burning low. The faint scrape of a quill across fragile vellum echoes softly, punctuated by the distant murmur of prayers drifting from the chapel beyond stone walls. You feel the coarse texture of the manuscript beneath your fingertips, its faded letters whispering secrets buried beneath centuries of silence. Around you, shadows lengthen, flickering in partial surrender to the dying light. She is 19, torn from the instant pulses of her modern world and plunged into medieval Paris's heavy quiet. Her mind, sharpened by logic and restless curiosity, combs through dusty texts and obscure notes, fragments of knowledge both ancient and forbidden. Tonight, she uncovers a revelation that breaks through the fog of uncertainty, an insight that could reshape survival itself. It is a spark in the darkness, fragile yet fierce, challenging beliefs and upending hidden fears. Her engineer's precision uncovers ways to refine water filtration torn from alchemical scripts. Her nursing instincts sense remedies veiled within herbal treatises forgotten by time. Yet knowledge here is a double-edged sword, both a key and a threat. The power to heal or harm hinges on interpretation and secrecy, as religious orthodoxy watches unseen, ready to pounce on heresy with swift severity. Outside, the chill night deepens. The city holds its breath beneath a canopy of stars dull with smoke and sorrow. Rumors of war creep like shadows through narrow alleys. Whispers of plague's slow return prick the air with dread. In this world, every leap of understanding carries risk, the threat of exile, accusation, or worse. The weight of discovery settles heavily on your shoulders alongside hope. You recognize that change will not come softly or simply, but demands unrelenting courage and careful concealment. Each turning page is a battleground where your allegiance between past and future, science and faith, is tested anew. As candlelight wanes to flicker and flame, exhaustion coils within you, physical, mental, and spiritual. Yet beneath the weariness glimmers an ember of purpose, a quiet promise that even in the darkest hours, truth's flicker can guide the way. The journey ahead is uncertain and perilous, but within this fragile light you dare to imagine new paths, paths that may one day transform not just your life, but the world you now inhabit. The cold stone beneath your fingers feels smooth and worn, a quiet testament to centuries of hands that came before you. The faint scent of damp earth mingles with the soft smoke curling from a nearby hearth, filling the modest room with a comforting warmth that contrasts the chill pressing through cracks in the timber walls. You hear the muted crackle of burning wood and the slow, steady rhythm of deep breaths, life pulsing faintly in the silence that surrounds you. Outside, the distant bustle of the city fades into a hazy murmur, leaving space for a stillness that invites reflection. She is 19, a soul torn from a world defined by fleeting images and digital connections, cast into medieval Paris where time flows slower and survival is raw and immediate. Tonight, in the flickering shadows, you feel the fragile heartbeat of a self reshaped by challenge and loss, a tension between who you were and who you have become. Your engineer's logic and nurse's empathy have been tempered by fire and shadow, each day chiseling away the old, revealing a new core beneath. You trace the edges of your worn cloak, the rough weave now a second skin, woven with sweat, grime, and quiet determination. Faces around you, etched with hardship, have become familiar companions in this unpredictable world. Their laughter, their fear, their resilience pulse alongside your own, a shared rhythm binding you to this place. Your modern assumptions about control, comfort, and certainty ebb away, replaced by a deepening patience and acceptance. You move with learned grace through the rituals and routines that govern medieval life, finding small moments of peace in communal meals, shared stories, and the steady care given and received. You feel yourself tethered not just by survival, but by belonging to a family formed not by blood, but by choice and shared hardship. Beyond the walls, the city breathes under starless skies, alive with struggle and hope. Inside, your breath steadies. Each inhale a quiet affirmation. The past is no longer a foreign land, but the landscape of your becoming. As exhaustion and calm weave through your limbs, a single truth settles softly. Identity is not fixed, but forged, through pain and joy, loss and love, in the silent, steady heartbeat of a life reclaimed and reinvented. The last pale glow of sunlight shimmers weakly on the surface of the Seine, casting fractured reflections that ripple with the passing of small wooden boats and the gentle sway of tethered barges. The air carries the briny scent of the river, mixed with the earthy dampness of mud and rotting leaves pressed into the banks. Along the water's edge, the uneven stones are slick and cold beneath your worn boots, and a soft breeze rustles through the stiff fibers of your cloak. The city's noises fade into a distant murmur, the calls of fishermen, the creak of rigging, the faint toll of cathedral bells marking the dwindling hours of day. She is 19, a traveler torn from time whose journey through this medieval world has stretched far beyond the physical miles. The Instagram influencer who once measured life in likes and moments now counts it in breaths drawn beneath an unfamiliar sky and in the shifting textures of human struggle. Your engineering gaze scans the river's flow, how it shapes the city's pulse, carries goods and stories alike, and mirrors your own journey, winding, unpredictable, relentless. You think of the people met and lost, their hopes, hardships, quiet acts of courage etched in the narrow streets and dark alleys. Your skills have woven you into the fabric of this place, each small invention, each healing touch anchoring you deeper in this raw world. Yet, the distance traveled is more than physical. It is a passage through doubt, fear, loss, and fragile new truths. The Seine encloses you in its soft murmurs, and you feel the weight of time's layering, past and present folding over one another like the river's endless current. Your mind drifts to the slow rhythms of medieval life, so unlike the rapid tides you once knew, where survival meant endurance, where time was marked by seasons and toil, and not by instant connection. The river's dark flow reminds you that life here is a constant navigation between what is given and what can be changed. As dusk deepens, shadows lengthening over timbered homes and stone bridges, your heart swells with quiet resolve. Exhaustion loosens its grip, replaced by a tempered hope born of experience and acceptance. You touch the cold water with a tentative finger, sensing in its flow a reflection of your own journey, a path carved through uncertainty towards something resembling belonging. In this fading light, you understand that survival is less about control and more about embracing the currents, learning to move within them, to find purpose in their shifting patterns. The journey is far from over, but as evening settles, you feel a fragile peace whispering amid the river's endless song. The rough grain of chiseled stone presses under your fingertips, cold and unyielding, carrying the faint scent of lime and dust that hangs thick in the quiet workshop. The distant hammering of masons echoes softly through narrow streets, a steady rhythm marking the painstaking work of shaping walls that will outlast lifetimes. You inhale deeply, the dry dust mingling with the sharper tang of wet clay and animal fat smeared on tools for sealing. Around you, fragments of carved shapes and unfinished arches await their turn, silent witnesses to hope forged in stone and sweat. She is 19, torn from a world of fleeting digital impressions into a 1350 Paris defined by permanence and fragility in equal measure. Your engineering mind, once focused on sleek machinery and rapid change, now grasps the slow, deliberate art of legacy. The painstaking effort to build structures that anchor communities through centuries of hardship and renewal. Each carefully shaped stone, every carved relief, embodies a resolve to endure beyond the fleeting present. The mason's trade is not merely physical, but a profound dialogue between vision and material, between human intention and the earth's resistance. You watch as the master carves intricate patterns, symbols of faith, protection, and community, each stroke measured against tradition and future need. Your understanding deepens of how knowledge here is layered and passed down, how technology and artistry intertwine within the delicate fabric of medieval life. Outside, the city bristles with urgent survival, plague's shadow, the distant rumble of conflict, and the subtle tensions of daily struggle. Yet within this space of stone and labor, you sense a thread of hope extending, a tangible promise that despite turmoil, something will remain. The structures being born beneath calloused hands whisper of endurance, a quiet rebellion against oblivion. Your modern assumptions about progress ripple awkwardly here. You crave swift innovation, rapid solutions, but learn humility in the slow craft's patience. Each decision carries weight far beyond immediate gain. It must honor those who came before and those yet to come. As the sun sinks and shadows deepen, fatigue sinks into your bones, tempered by awe. You touch the cold stone once more and wonder about the legacies we leave behind, not in fleeting likes or momentary fame, but in enduring marks shaped by care, labor, and an unspoken vow to be remembered. The warm, earthy aroma of freshly turned soil blends with the faint sweetness of crushed herbs left drying by an open window. The steady hum of early morning activity drifts softly from the marketplace beyond the crooked lane. The clang of a blacksmith's hammer striking iron, the murmur of vendors arranging their goods, the distant bleat of sheep moved from pens. Your fingers brush the rough bark of a wooden cart, smoothed by years of use but still marked with splinters. The cool air carries a gentle breeze that rustles coarse linen and whispers through wind chimes hung from eaves. Here, in the quiet cusp of daybreak, you catch a breath of calm amid the city's relentless pulse. She is 19, caught far from the instant rhythms of her former life, learning to breathe in the measured cadence of medieval Paris. The world you've stepped into is harsh but alive, raw textures and sounds filling senses dulled by screens and speed. Your engineering mind, once pressed to quick solutions, now appreciates the subtle balances here. Water conservation through worn aqueducts, community labor shared beneath open skies, the slow crafting that shapes tools and trust alike. The market begins to thicken with energy, bartering, laughter, and the occasional sharp word knit neighbors and strangers into fragile alliances. You find yourself part of this woven fabric, offering practical help to repair a broken cartwheel, advising on water filters fashioned from simple cloth, sharing lessons from the distant future wrapped cautiously in old words. Some offer guarded smiles, others watch silently, their faces shaded by experience and uncertainty. Here, acceptance is a daily work, carved through small actions and steady presence. Outside, war drums echo faint on the horizon, and the shadow of plague lingers, shaping the city's breath. Yet within this woven community, moments of peace bloom, shared meals, whispered prayers, strangers offering warmth against the biting chill. Your body, once accustomed to the pace of modern ease, now thrives on the honest labor of connection and care. The rough skin of your hands and the rhythm of daily chores etch a new map of belonging. As dusk stretches long fingers over slate rooftops, lanterns and candles flicker to life. Your thoughts settle quietly beneath the vastness of an old sky, drained but steady. The journey here reshapes more than geography. It redraws the boundaries of identity, belonging, and resilience. You realize that acceptance isn't surrender, but a breath held deep before stepping forward, a readiness to embrace what is, and to build new life from the ancient stones beneath your feet. The sharp scent of freshly hewn timber mingles with the faint musk of damp stone and the acrid tang of charcoal smoke, filling the cramped workshop where you stand. The steady scrape of a carpenter's plane against rough wood fills the air, punctuated by soft thuds as shaping tools meet solid surfaces. Your hands, once accustomed to the sleek touch screens and tempered glass of the future, now grasp splintered planks and worn blades, feeling the grain's uneven texture beneath fingertips calloused by effort and time. Outside, the murmur of the city floats through narrow windows, a blend of street cries, metalworkers, clangs, and the slow flow of the Seine threading through ancient streets. She is 19, transported beyond centuries, learning the weight and promise of transformation in 1350 Paris. Your engineering mind, trained in precision and design, finds new purpose in the deliberate craft of timber and nail, shaping more than wood, but the fragile trust of neighbors and the resilience of community. Each planed surface and hammered joint carries hope, not just for shelter or trade, but for renewal after hardship. Here, new beginnings are forged slowly, carved from tradition and tempered by necessity. You study the angles and joints, adapting past knowledge to present tools, aware that these innovations ripple quietly through social bonds. A sturdier doorframe means more security for a family. Better shelves in a communal granary promise shared sustenance during lean times. Your presence, a strange blend of foreigner and craftsman, sparks curiosity and cautious whispers. Your modern skills both a gift and a source of suspicion in a city wary of change yet desperate for survival. Beyond the workshop, Paris brims with both resilience and unease. The distant roll of thunder mirrors the tension threading through rumors of war, plague, and fractured alliances. Yet inside, the steady pulse of creation, wood shavings curling like delicate dreams, offers a counterpoint, a tangible sign that life persists, that tomorrow can be built from the fragments of yesterday. As daylight fades, shadows stretch long across stone and timber, and fatigue settles deep within your muscles. Yet beneath weariness, a quiet strength grows, a fragile faith in the power of beginnings, and the courage to open doors closed by time and fear. Your journey through centuries teaches that transformation is less about sudden leaps, and more about patient crafting, a steady hand-guiding change not just of wood and nail, but of heart and history. The cool air of dawn carries the sharp, earthy scent of wet stone and fresh river water. As the first rays of light stretch thin and pale over the Seine, the cobblestones beneath your feet are slick with morning mist, slick and uneven, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. You feel the rough texture of your woolen cloak, damp where it clings to your shoulders, and beneath, the steady rhythm of your heartbeat thunders in your chest, a reminder of the life still pulsing through this ancient city. The distant clang of merchant carts and the low murmur of awakening voices thread through the city's slow breath, weaving a new day's uncertain promise. She is 19, displaced and unmoored, a modern soul caught in medieval Paris's relentless tide. The world she once knew, a world of rapid connection and instant knowledge, has dissolved into these fog-wrapped streets thick with the scent of hearth and toil, where each breath is hard-won and every moment is steeped in survival. Your engineering mind, tuned to precision and progress, now takes refuge in the patient craft of adaptation, drawing on skills honed in another era to navigate this complex, fragile world. The relationships you have built, tentative and sometimes fragile, form the backbone of your existence here. Your interventions, small and careful, have eased burdens. A repaired axle smooths the path of a cart carrying bread. A cleaned water source guards against hidden sickness. Trust grows in these daily acts, as does your sense of belonging within a community, bound less by blood and more by shared endurance. The city moans beneath the weight of plagues past and wars looming, its people hardened but hopeful, clutching to traditions even as the winds of change whisper through alleyways. You observe the rhythms of life, market bargains, prayers whispered beneath cathedral shadows, the cautious laughter of children weaving between stalls. These moments stitch together a tapestry of resilience and fragility. As the sun rises higher, washing the city in golden light, a quiet determination settles over you. The journey has transformed you. The fragile self of before has been tempered in stone and fire, loss and small victories. You inhale deeply, tasting the mingled scents of earth and smoke, knowing that the path ahead is uncertain but chosen. In this dawning light, you find a resolve steady and deep, a commitment not just to survival, but to becoming fully part of this harsh, yet vibrant world. The future may be uncharted, but your footprints now mark the streets of a Paris reborn in the slow, patient pulse of history.